So hey there, my name is Brent Smith and I'm the Common Constitutionalist, and welcome to another edition of the Common Constitutionalist Weekend Video Podcast. And we're outdoors again, hooray. Hopefully the wind won't blow too much so it drowns me out. But today we'll be going to be talking about one main topic and then kind of like a follow-on. It's not related or anything, but it's just a real quick add-on type of thing, won't take too long. And so basically the two topics are going to be the Korean War remains that were returned to the U.S. this week and GDP growth. Wow, a couple of real exciting topics, but I think they need to be spoken of, particularly this Korean War thing. Really rubbed me the wrong way when I saw it initially. So we'll get to that today on this edition of the Common Constitutionalist Video Podcast. Be right back.
You're watching the Common Constitutionalist Weekend Video Podcast.
Okay, welcome back. So I've got this, got my notes, and the Korean War stuff came from several different sources. Some of this stuff I already knew. The history of the stuff I knew pretty much. But some of the sources for the current stuff, the Trump quotes and things like that, I don't remember where I got them. I just got them, so sorry for the non-attribution. At any rate, the remains of multiple U.S. troops killed in the Korean War more than 6 decades ago are headed back to America now after North Korean officials turned them over to military officials, White House officials, a lot of officials going on here. I don't know who wrote this, but there must be the Department of Redundancy Department or something. White House officials announced Thursday night. In all, 55 cases of remains were returned so far. I had to take my glasses off. I don't need them. It's not sunny out. Well, it is, but I'm in the shade. Whatever. So the move comes on the 65th anniversary of the armistice that ended hostilities in the conflict about 6 weeks after President Trump met with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. In a statement, White House officials praised their North Korean counterparts for honoring a promise from that meeting to return the remains. We are encouraged by the North Koreans' actions and the momentum for positive change, the White House statement read or said or something. Trump said, We have many others coming, but I want to thank Chairman Kim in front of the media for fulfilling a promise that he made to me, and I'm sure that he will continue to fulfill that promises as they search and search and search. Yay! Trump's a wordsmith, don't you know? He's the multiple wordsmith, like the Department of Redundancy Department, with the officials, military officials and officials. He added that these incredible American heroes will soon lay at rest on sacred American soil. And good for him, good for Kim, and good for us for getting these Korean remains back 60 some odd years later. Better late than never, I suppose. But no doubt, the mainstream media, if they haven't already, will feign utter outrage that Trump thanked Kim Jong-un. Doesn't he know that Kim Jong-un is a murderous thug? But maybe, just maybe, I know what it is. Trump is not only a Russian agent working for Putin, he's also an agent of North Korea working for Kim Jong-un. That's the ticket. CNN, take that and run with it, and that'll get you some more rating points, because you don't have any currently. So first, remember the Iran deal? When John Kerry met with the Iranian leaders and Obama, the whole thing with Iran. And I never heard complaint one about Obama dealing with the Iranian leaders or John Kerry or whatever, genuflecting in front of the Iranian leaders when he was dealing with Iran, who are as bad as North Korea. Thuggery, as far as thuggery goes. And not a word was said about that. But naturally, anything that Trump says that's nice about North Korea or Kim Jong-un, he knows who he is. But the fake media is going to fake outrage over it. And the second, like I said, of course Trump knows that this guy's a thug and a dirtbag. But what is he supposed to say to the media? Is he supposed to say, thanks a lot for for finally giving us our soldiers back, you pygmy swine? What took you so freaking long, you dirtbag? Is he supposed to, how constructive would that be? I mean, what's he supposed to say? He butters them up, or he knocks them down. That's his strategy. Duh, can't people figure that out by now? But the fake outrage is just ridiculous. So anyway, to get to the crux of the story, I'm sure you've all seen those, maybe not all 55 boxes, but a representation of those crates that the soldiers were carrying that were being offloaded off of military aircraft. And you notice the UN flag or the UN banner or whatever it is draped across these things, or twined down or battened down or something over these crates. And if you're a patriotic American, of which I am and most of you are, hopefully, your first inclination is to say, what the blank? What the heck is this? I don't get it. Why aren't these crates draped with American flags and are wrapped in the UN banner or UN flag? What the heck is going on here? This doesn't make any sense. These are US remains. These aren't UN remains. These aren't remains from another country under the UN banner. These are US remains. They should have US flags. What's up with that? And frankly, if I didn't know the history and I was one of the family members of one of these fallen soldiers' remains, once they get identified, I'd be pretty pissed off that they weren't carried out of the aircraft with an American flag on. That would tick me off to no end, man. You finally get your remains back, the remains back of a beloved family member, hero, and out pops the UN. I mean, give me a frickin' break. Ugh. But back in the year 2000, there are also photographs of coffins being offloaded from military aircraft, not with an American flag draped over the coffin, an American soldier's body with a coffin with an American flag draped on it. No, no, no. Once again, it had the UN flag draped over it. Now, what the heck is up with that? Well, I know what's up with that, and I'm going to tell you right after the break. So we'll break, come right back, and I'll tell you the history of what's up with that, with the UN flags. See you in a bit.
You're watching the Common Constitutionalist video podcast.
Yeah, baby! Yeah.
Okay, so to recap, we got 55 crates coming back with American soldiers' remains from the Korean War from 65 years ago. I guess 68 if you count the start of the war, 1950, whatever. And they were draped with the UN banner or UN flag wrapped around the crates instead of the US flag. And me, like many people, have to be asking, I know I was asking, well, I wasn't really, well, whatever. Many people would be asking, what the heck is up with that? Why doesn't it have the US flag on it? Why does it have the UN flag? And I'm going to put my sun's on because the sun's coming back out again, or it's poking through the tree or something and it's bugging the crap out of me. But anyway, so this is the reason why. And you can ask you can thank old Harry Truman. Harry the buck stops here, Truman. Now, why would he be at fault like 68 years after the fact? Well, here's why would I blame Harry Truman, okay? The great American Harry Truman. Yeesh. Well, funny you should ask. Here's why. This is the reason. It was Truman who decided not to ask Congress for a declaration of war against North Korea. That was Truman's decision. Truman is, in fact, the father of the undeclared war. And until he started this, presidents actually followed the Constitution, even the ones like Roosevelt and Wilson, who despised the Constitution. They hated the Constitution. Roosevelt wrote the second Bill of Rights to frankly replace the first Bill of Rights. And that it all comes back usually in this kind of stuff to the Constitution, that dusty old document that few heed and offer fidelity to anymore. That's the whole point, because it's usually, as far as governance goes, wars and everything else go, you look to the Constitution, you'll find the answer. It's right there as a reminder. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 11. Quote, the Congress shall have the power to declare war, grant letters of marque and reprisal, and make rules concerning captures on land and water, unquote. So unless the president, but there's a little footnote in there that somebody added in at the end. Maybe you missed it. It was right on the bottom of the Article 1, and it was a clause that it was so fine you could only read it with a microfilm reader, and it said unless the president doesn't feel like it, going to Congress to declare war, unless the president doesn't feel like it, then he can just send troops anywhere he likes and get a wink and a nod from Congress later. So a lot of people might have missed that at the base of Article 1, just because it's written really small. That's the way it's not really there, but in effect that's what they do, because they don't follow the Constitution. Presidents don't follow the Constitution, nor does Congress make a demand of the president, because they're too wimpy to declare war. They don't want to do it, so they slough it off to the president, and the president just says, okay, sure, we'll go anywhere we want for an undeclared war. We'll call it a conflict and whatever. That's exactly what Truman said. And so here we go. And I was thinking about this, the treatment of the Constitution, and the original Pirates of the Caribbean movie, Jack Sparrow and Will Turner and all those guys. Great movie. And in that movie, Jack was, I guess he was left behind, and then he caught up to the ship or something like that, and they dragged him aboard, and Jack Sparrow says to his first mate, Mr. Gibbs, I think that's what his name was. Seen the movie a few times. You may have noticed. I like it. My kids were real huge pirate fans when they were little, and so we watched that movie a lot. Anyway, so Jack Sparrow, after he gets aboard ship, he turns to Gibbs and says, I thought you were supposed to, what did he say? I thought you were supposed to keep to the pirate code. And Mr. Gibbs turns and answers, well, we figured they were just more actual guidelines than a set of rules. And that's the way Congress, the President, and the Senate, and the judiciary, that's the way they treat the Constitution. More just guidelines than actual set-in-stone rules. Of course, that's not the way it's supposed to be, but that's the way they treat it. So here's what actually happened in 1950, I guess it was. On June 25th, 1950, North Korean forces invaded South Korea by crossing over the 38th parallel with the support of the Ruskies, our World War II ally, don't you know, okay? And they were supported by the Soviet Union and to attack South Korea, the North Koreans were. And so the first thing I thought of was, you know what, General Patton was right when he said that we should go finish these guys, the Soviets, while they were damaged goods. We were over there. We had all the men, we had all the equipment, we had all the firearms, we had everything there, the firepower to get it done. We should have just wiped out the Soviet Union when we had the chance, just like Patton wanted to do. And no, they decided not to, and it came back and bite us, and it took us. We won the Cold War eventually, but it took, 30 years, 40 years, whatever it was, I don't know. Okay, so at any rate, the United States immediately pressed for the UN to act, for the United Nations to act. On June 25th and June 27th, the United Nations passed directives urging for a ceasefire for all member nations for a ceasefire and all member nations to provide assistance to the South Koreans. Yay! So they passed a bunch of nonsense, okay, provisions or whatever, directives. The UN Security Council was able to pass these measures because the Soviet Union had recently boycotted the Security Council and chose not to participate. And since they were a part of the Security Council, it has to be unanimous, and since they backed out, then the rest of then they had unanimity, and it was all groovy. Okay? So, anyway, Truman didn't press for Congress to declare war, as I said. Instead, he decided to go to the newly minted United Nations that was just founded in 1945, so 5 years later, after their founding, and he classified the Korean conflict as a UN-led police action operating under the authority of the UN Security Council. So the Korean War was a police action. Yeah, sure. You tell the guys that fought and died over there what kind of police action this was. Give me a frickin' break. You've got to be kidding me. So that was the reason why the Korean conflict wasn't won, because it was considered a police action, and so we didn't try as hard as if we had declared war. If you declare war, that's serious business. You got to go. Americans go win wars. Okay. Police actions, you fight to a draw. Well, I hate to say, but a draw is a loss. Sorry, in my world, a draw is a loss. Anything but a win is a win, okay? Or excuse me, anything but a win is a loss. That made a lot of sense, didn't it? Anything but a win is a loss, period. So when you fight to a draw like we did in North Korea, then we lost the war. Okay, we won a lot of battles and we lost the war. Typical, all right? Typical these days. So the reason was that Truman didn't want to get involved. He didn't want to be the cause of World War III. He didn't want to. This is the guy that had the stones to drop nuclear bombs on Japan to end the war, and he lost his nerve in North Korea, the North Korean police action. So there was a great skit. There's this Rodney Danger movie called Back to School. Funny movie, completely ridiculous. So Dangerfield is in a college class, and the professor is this. I think it's a history class, and the history professor is played by the late great, really loud Sam Kinison, comedian Sam Kinison. He's the guy that screams at the camera for a reason. And Kinison presses Dangerfield as to why we didn't prevail in North Korea, prevail over North Korea during the Korean War, or the Korean conflict, excuse me. And he yells and screams in his face, "Say it, say it, say it!" And then Dangerfield finally opens up and says basically that Truman rhymes with wussy. It was a hilarious skit. Kinison did a fabulous job as typically. So did Dangerfield, but it was historically accurate was the thing. So, and Truman's and that's the problem with this kind of stuff, is that Truman's actions actually set the precedent for all the bullcrap conflicts that we get dragged into around the world without congressional approval. And even if they say wink and a nod, approve, yes, like the what was that thing we did before the Iraq War? Well, we should have just done what the Constitution says, that Congress shall have the power to declare war. Maybe a little bit, kind of, whenever they feel like it. They shall have the power to, the President can't do it, the Senate can't do it, the Judiciary can't do it. It's the Congress. That's who declares wars. And when you go into a conflict, you have a declaration of war. It's not that big a deal to get for Congress, as long as we're a worthy cause, so to speak, or we're under direct attack, and just get it done. And it's why we win all these battles, like in Vietnam. I don't think we lost a single battle in Vietnam, but yet we somehow found a way through politicians to lose the war. That's enough. I'm not getting into that nonsense. We're going to take a real quick break, and I'll be right back to wrap up the GDP growth rate and what it means for us. Yay, another fabulous, wild topic. Woohoo! See ya.
You're watching the Common Constitutionalist video podcast.
Real quick, The Trump economy is humming along, as we know. Even Democrats, well, maybe not even the Democrats, but the liberal media even has to give them a nod that the fact that the economy is humming along. They don't want it to be humming along. They want a recession. They want a they want the second Great Depression under Trump. That's what they want. They'll never say it in a million years. They'd never admit it, but that's what the Democrats want, and the media can't possibly admit that Trump's doing a good job with the economy. So yesterday, Trump announced that GDP, well, you know who, whatever, but Trump got up there in front of all the cameras and whatnot, and he announced GDP growth rate for last quarter was 4.1%, and said that higher GDP growth is on the horizon, much higher, he said. And it is the highest GDP growth, single quarter GDP growth in since 2014. So that's pretty good. We need to follow it up, but that's pretty good. And Trump said that we are going to go a lot higher than these numbers, and these are great numbers, and they are great numbers. If you could sustain 4% growth rate for a year or two or whatever, be dynamite. Maybe it will be dynamite. So the numbers are great, but there may be a price to be paid for this rapid growth, okay? Should it continue, that is. And it probably will, trade wars notwithstanding. Well, we don't know about the trade wars, okay? And most of the stuff, like I said before, most of these tariffs haven't even gone into effect. Trump's just threatening them, and so far the EU is buckled. I don't know what China's going to do, but they're the exception to the rule. China is really the exception to the rule as far as this tariff nonsense goes. I hate tariffs personally, but whatever. We've already discussed that at another time. So the problem is the Federal frickin' Reserve. These weenies at the Federal Reserve, the pinhead academics at the Federal Reserve. The guys and gals that have been screwing up the American economy for decades and decades and decades, all right? Yeah, probably right after Calvin Coolidge, I guess. That's when the Federal Reserve decided to kick in. They're the ones that caused the Great Depression. Whatever. I'm not even going to go into that either, but whatever. Okay, so they have a real problem with what they call runaway growth, all right? So high GDP rates means the economy is expanding, right? Well, GDP growth leads to greater demand for goods and services, okay? Greater demand will inevitably lead to higher prices, which will lead to inflation. And there's a frickin' jet going by. Don't drop your waist load on my head. Yeah, baby. Ever seen one of those things, the big blue blocks that fall out of the sky? I think they dumped them over the ocean if they're allowed to dump them at all. But boom, shakalaka. All right, where was I? Okay, so so higher GDP rates because the higher GDP growth leads to greater demand for goods and services. Greater demand will inevitably lead to higher prices, and it will, and higher prices will lead to inflation. And the Fed despises inflation. They hate inflation. It's the worst thing in the world, apparently, according to the Fed. So probably more than anything else, they hate inflation. That's the bottom line. So to combat inflation, they will begin to raise interest rates more rapidly, which will lead to a clampdown on the easy money, easy credit. It'll also lead to less lending, of course, because of the interest rates are going to get bumped up, so they have to be more constrictive in their lending, all right, more selective in their lending. Not to mention higher credit card bills and whatnot, which a lot of people with credit card debt can't handle it. They're able to get by with these low rates, relatively low rates. If you start jacking up credit card rates, boy, there's going to be a lot more bankruptcies, bro. That's just the way it's going to go. So that's what they're going to do to combat inflation, and the result is going to be to stunt the economic growth and tamp down GDP. So if GDP starts to run wild, so to speak, according to the Fed, this is what's more than likely going to happen. The Fed's going to get involved as inflation increases. If inflation increases, they hate that. They're going to raise interest rates, and it's going to pull the rug out from under Trump's economy, unfortunately. Now, if you are a political conspiracy, you would say that that's on purpose. And if Janet Stop Your Yelling was still in charge, I might think that too. I don't know at this point. We'll see what the Fed does. As far as I'm concerned, with the Fed's line of thinking, anything beyond, say, 2.5% or 3% scares the crap out of the Fed. So what's that going to mean? So that's going to mean wind. Oh, storms are coming, bro. So that is going to mean that Trump's going to go to war with the Fed now. He's gone to war with every daggum buddy. Man, he's going to be stretched thin. But that's just more than likely what's going to happen if we get runaway growth, so to speak, according to the Fed, and that they're going to open up their little bag of tricks, and that's the only bag of tricks they got is to raise interest rates, just like the only thing they got is to lower interest rates. And here comes the freaking wind. Boy, the storm's blowing in. I got to get this. Wind or no wind, I got to get out of here. So, I got to get home before it starts a storming. That's all I got today. Y'all have a blessed balance of the weekend. I fully intend to. And this is Brent Smith. I'm the Common Constitutionalist signing off. I'm out. See ya.